Welcome to Tech Talk. So it's a show where we dive deep into ever-evolving IT topics and the world of information technology. So we cover latest in cybersecurity topics like threat defenses, also transformation power of cloud solutions, data center technologies, even financial tech, fintech organization technology topics, and also coupled and combined with the way that this technology shapes and grow modern businesses. It's another important topic from our channel. So today with us is Paul Marco. Paul is a co-founder of Talas Security. This is based in New York, Syracuse, if I'm correct. And Paul has extensive experience, more than 2 decades, I read here, of IT and cybersecurity in the IT and cybersecurity space, ranging from operations, incident response, vulnerability management, identity and access management, threat intelligence, engineering, and many more, with a focus of designing solutions that in the end they become operational to enhance control. So Paul, welcome.
Well, thank you, Theodoros. Appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about Talas. I read in your website that you created this company over a kind of a drawing on a, what was that drawing, on a paper napkin, on a kind of
It's not that cliche. No, I mean we created Talas Security because we were trying to solve some of the bigger problems, right? And those bigger problems were about how do we bring cybersecurity to small, medium-sized businesses, right? And it actually all started as a tabletop company. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with what a cybersecurity tabletop is or tabletops in general, but they're effectively a process where people get together and they practice their emergency responses, right? So in cybersecurity, we're typically practicing the cybersecurity incident response plan, but this could be for anything. This could be for a broken water main. It could be for some type of emergency response for police or fire, right? And it all started with just kind of once you have a plan in place, you have to make sure that those things are going to work together. My co-founder and myself, we had got tired of kind of the old way of doing cybersecurity tabletops. We wanted to change it up a bit. And that's how the company started. What we figured out is as we were building this process for developing new cybersecurity tabletops over time, we realized we needed a lot of information. We needed a lot of the data that organizations have as part of their cyber program. And as we started building the processes to get this data and organize it and make it really, really simple, we realized we were solving kind of this larger cybersecurity problem for small and medium-sized businesses. And that's really what Talas Security is today. We are a cybersecurity services company. We focus on, all of those same types of professional services that other organizations provide. The difference is we try to make it as simple as possible when we run our client cybersecurity programs.
So thank you very much. Thank you for this introduction. So you're mentioning that your company targets small to medium-sized businesses. So what are the key challenges that you are facing as a business in this area? Could you name the ones that create the most pain when when you wake up? The ones that
It's such an interesting question because the problems are the same no matter what size organization you have, right? If you're a tiny little one-person startup up to the largest, Fortune 10 companies globally, all those cybersecurity problems are exactly the same. The difference is scale, right? The difference is how much is the impact? How large are your threat impacts? Things to that effect. So, in terms of solving the problems, really it's about trying to understand what are the nuanced problems for the individual organizations, regardless of size, and then figuring out how we pull all of the data together to try to understand what's the best solution to solve those problems for those companies. But there's so many variables that tie into that. Things like what's your risk appetite? What's your business? Who do you serve? Are you online? Are you not? Are you building things where you have to worry about supply chain, or are you, managing things like finances or financial services where it's all really data, bits and bytes on servers? So the problem with cybersecurity really is that as much as those problems are the same, it's those outliers that will make it a little harder for individual organizations to figure out where to focus. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. This is about where to focus.
Listen, I wanted to ask you this question, and
Sure.
do you have a story of a client that was a little bit, I don't know, difficult client that you managed somehow to convince or to, let's say, to um, it started not so nicely, but in the end you managed to turn them around. For example, if you have such a story, what was the biggest concern from your customers to gain trust in you so that they see the value that you brought? If you
Yeah,
have
I mean,
such a
I don't have stories that are specific to, seeing value, right? Anytime anyone engages with us, they're out to solve a problem, and it's a problem that we have experience solving. But I will say there are two types of customers that are out there, and this is not just my customer. These are all customers, right? Of all of the organizations I've interacted with, of all the ones I've talked to, people that work in other organizations, there are really two types of companies. Companies that have been breached and companies that will be breached, right? And the difference is the companies that have experienced a cyber attack know exactly what the impacts are. They understand that that risk has been realized from a cybersecurity perspective and that they need to invest in the protections that are going to keep those risks as small as possible because they've already felt the pain. They already understand what it is to go against an attacker or to have, a bad regulatory report or to you really just have poor cybersecurity hygiene that would cause some issues that maybe leads to some reputational harm. However, there's the other side of the fence. These are the organizations that haven't felt that yet. And look, as a cyber professional, I hope there are organizations out there that never do. But the reality is everyone is going to. Every single organization on the planet is going to feel this at some point. And those are the organizations where, because it hasn't been real for them yet, and they become desensitized to the headlines and to the news, it's a little harder to articulate or to get them to experience why they're investing in cybersecurity the way that we believe that they should.
Thank you so much for this answer. I mean, your answer is like a headline. I mean, we have to we want to focus this, and there are two types of organizations. Yeah, not all of the organizations really, unfortunately, realize that, and they face these difficult times when they have been breached. And as you have really very well said, that it's not a very nice experience business-wise also, but also emotionally, I would say.
Oh, it's
Um,
a real experience going through a breach. I've been through a number of them over the course of my career, just by virtue of my role as an incident response and detection. And it does take an emotional toll on you. It really does impact you because not only do you have to deal with the technical response, right? Shutting systems down, resetting accounts, taking back servers, right? Restoring domain controllers, whatever it is. But you also have to contend with this concept of some external party gained access to my systems. It's how someone would feel if they broke into your home, right? Like this is supposed to be a safe place where you do business. And that's been violated now, right? They've been running around your network. They've been stealing your data. So not only is there a technical element to this where you have to go through and fix things technically, but there's an emotional element. Your customers, your employees, the folks that now you have to explain that because your network wasn't secured the proper way, or because there was some issue of vulnerability and misconfiguration, or whatever it is, that trust is lost, right? And that trust has to be rebuilt back. And that's kind of the emotional effect that it has on organizations.
so maybe here is really helpful a bit. So from your perspective, if you would work with a company that has been breached, what would be your recommendation to them, or how would you tackle the day after they have been breached? Would you have some kind of guidelines for them or some recommendations how to handle such an incident? Because your experience, I mean, summarizes a lot, right? Everything in what happens in the cybersecurity space.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends where in the timeline you are. And if we're truly talking about the next day is very focused on restoration of services, rebuilding systems, ensuring the attackers have been properly expelled from the network. It's really kind of that very first day one step, right? You learn you've been breached, right? You bring in your incident response teams, or your team works to get them out, but then you have to go through all of the process of what happened. What was what was the patient zero? Like, how did they get in? What controls failed? You have to start to really dissect the network to understand what were the things that worked on your network and what were the things that didn't work. And then you have to be really honest about yourself to say, all right, well, these are the things that didn't work. These are the controls that were broken. This is what allowed this attacker or this actor to join, to get on the network and do what they needed to do, or wanted to do. And then you have to start that process of fixing it, right? And that might mean implementing new controls, changing configurations of old controls, implementing better process. It could be as simply as developing internal policy, right? Someone did something they weren't supposed to do. Training and awareness, people control. So, I mean, that first day post breach, that first week really is very intense. It's all about understanding that post-mortem. What did we see? What didn't we see? Which is just as important. And then what do we do now to fix this so that this never happens again?
So on that side, what will you do now, or will they do, or will you do now to so that this never happens again? Is also you would recommend also some kind of changes in the processes or how this company does things, right? Probably some of the reasons of a breach would was a kind of processes that were not functioning properly, not just an attacker that had superior technology.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it could be as simple as a misconfiguration, right? It could be one checkbox where some external storage, bucket S3 or blob storage or fill in the blank was exposed. And that's literally a checkbox. It could be that a system wasn't patched. It could be that a person didn't properly report a phishing email, or that, some technical control broke. So like the thing is, like, to your point, you have to think about this as deeper than just technology. It's never just, I have a firewall and the firewall let the traffic through. It's never that simple. There are always these layers of cybersecurity, or what we like to refer to as control elements. And those are things like your standards, your policies, your technology, your process, your people, the things that all come together to provide the holistic cybersecurity controls that any organization deploys. And any one of those could have broke, or in most cases, it's multiple of them in sequence, which is what allows to a breach scenario.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's really nice to reiterate that, or to at least um, to to hear this, so that it's a whole thing of processes and way of operation of an enterprise, of a company, of a business. That if
Yeah.
all these controls are in place, then you can feel a little bit safer. So that's
Well, I'll
the
tell you
possibility of a breach.
another example of your question here is, you can have an organization that spends millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars on technology, all of the best technology, the best firewall, the best IDS, the best NAC, the best MFA, the best fill in the blank, right? EDR, AV, it doesn't matter, all the acronyms that exist in cybersecurity. But if you don't have process to use them, if you don't have the people trained to use them, what does it matter? It's still not going to work. Just because you have something, just because you've bought it, just because you've paid an invoice doesn't mean you're secure. You need to pull those things together. And that's what it means to have a mature cybersecurity program.
And here, that one leads us a little bit to a very interesting topic, because we spoke about processes and we spoke about technology, and we know now that every day, or a kind of, I don't know, every hour, there are a handful of new threats out there. And this threat landscape is increasing and increasing and increasing. And so, how do you feel about that? Are you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel threatened
Yeah.
of this landscape, that everyone now has the technology or the tools to create new attacks or new threats, especially with the advent of AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one space. The reason I got into cybersecurity, and actually the reason I got into IT in general, was because I wanted to be in a space that moves very quickly. I wanted to get into a space where I can be an expert fast. And in order to do that, you have to get into a space that moves very fast. IT moved fast. Every 6 months, it was iterating. New technology was coming out, new processors, new operating systems, new capabilities. Well, if that was fast, cybersecurity is even faster. And to your point, it is one of those things where you cannot protect against holistically. I have seen the best protected networks with the best people and the best technology, and they ultimately became breached because of the new threats that are constantly emerging that you can't control for. Things like zero-day vulnerabilities. There's no protection for that. That's where you have to rely on architecture, defense in depth in order to just contain the attack, contain the threat, because they're going to make it in. They're going to get to that first kind of that first ingress point right through the 0 day. But like even then, it's very difficult to keep up with everything, right? It's overwhelming. I think the last metric I heard, and this was 2 years ago, it was something like it was an average of 87 new vulnerabilities were discovered a day. 87 a day. We're counting now in minutes. These aren't hours. These aren't days. We're counting in minutes that a new threat is emerging, a new threat is emerging, a new threat, a new vulnerability, a new tactic, a new proof of concept. So yeah, it is one of those things that's very, very overwhelming to deal with. And that's why our experience has been the more you can make sense of cybersecurity, the more you can simplify your control to understand what that control stack looks like, what that defense in depth looks like, the better off you'll be because you'll have the understanding, you'll have the clarity you need to know that when a new attack emerges or a new vulnerability emerges, you understand what your controls look like to contain that, to stop it, to slow it, right? Or even just to minimize its impact.
So here's okay, that's interesting. But here's the point. Let's say you get a customer, and the
Sure.
customer comes into your office and says, Paul, we are very scared because we know that every day we have these new vulnerabilities. So how
Sure.
can we protect ourselves? What do you think that we should do? What would you reply to them?
So the
If,
first thing yeah, please
yeah,
go
if
ahead.
people are concerned, let's say, and they have this fear that, I mean, how are we going to be able to defend ourselves against this all forever emerging threat landscape?
So I wish there was like a direct, simple answer, right? And I guess the most direct answer would be to have a vulnerability scanner. But the thing is, like, if a customer came to me and said, "Hey, I'm really worried about vulnerabilities. What can I do?" Well, we really have to understand like what the core concerns are. Is the core concern that a new vulnerability is going to come out and an attacker is going to attempt to exploit it? Well, fine, but there's so many different vectors to think about. Are you worried about the attacker trying to exploit it via phishing? So now you have to worry about email. Are you worried about them trying to exploit an external facing web application? Well, that's a different set of controls, right? So the vulnerability concern is the same concern, but the direction you take really focuses in on, well, which way are you concerned about the attacker coming in? And if it's both, well, now we're thinking about the entire network, right? Because like the concept of just being concerned about vulnerabilities is valid, but there's so many steps that exist in between the attacker exploiting a vulnerability and them even getting to it before the fact of the matter of the next sets of steps that have to occur in order for them to actually successfully exploit an entire network. So like when we think about this, if this customer came in, the first thing we would say is, well, all right, walk us through your major concern. Walk us through what you're really worried about. Really worried about, someone going to a website and clicking the wrong result in Google or typing the wrong name in the keyboard and being directed to a malicious site that is similar or is off by one letter or something like that. And those are valid concerns as well. But in those cases, I would say, all right, well, if you're worried about web traffic, you need to focus on web URL filtering, right? With categorization. If they say email, I would talk about natural language processing solutions for email protection, right? Or even just traditional, email antivirus. If they were concerned about web applications, well, I'd start talking about things like WAF and patching, right? And making sure that you're conducting penetration tests on your web app. So again, like I wish it was easy for me to say, oh, well, if you're worried about vulnerabilities, go get a vulnerability scanner. But that vulnerability scanner is not going to address the three scenarios we just talked about, right? So we really have to get into the nitty gritty. We have to get into the detail of what the concerns are, which means that we really have to understand the customer's network.
And will there be this magic sentence that you will voice or you will say to the CEO of that company of your customer to tell him you can or tell her you can sleep at night?
I never make promises I can't fulfill. So absolutely not. I will never promise that I can eliminate all of the stress. But what I can promise is that cybersecurity becomes less stressful the more you understand how it works. The more you can get organized on your controls in your network, the more you have clarity of how your controls exist, where they exist, and how they're protecting you. That's where you can start to build some level of confidence. And that's the thing I think a lot of people lack is because people they think, oh, you know what, I have EDR, so I'm good, right? But that's just one little part of the network. That's just endpoint. That leaves out an entire portion of the network. And in some cases, even if you have EDR, it still can be circumvented by attackers. So this is not about, don't worry, I have the best solution on the planet. We're going to make it so that you can never be breached. If I promise that to someone, I would expect to be sued because that is a false statement. No one can guarantee that.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I understand, of course. And I believe also one of the objectives of proper security is to mitigate the risks in such a way that even if something happens, then the damage to a business would be minimal or kind of manageable rather
Absolutely.
than really derailing the company or even making it never opening again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the guidance I give my customers is, it's a little counterintuitive, but it's true. I never tell my customers your goal is to be so that you can never be hacked, that you can never be impacted by a threat actor. That's an incorrect statement. Everyone can be impacted. But if you've built your controls in a way, we can achieve what you just described, which is reducing the blast radius, right? Minimizing how impactful that particular issue, event, or whatever is on someone's network so that it's easier to recover from. So that you're minimizing your losses from the perspective of data or reputation or legal exposure or whatever it is that your particular organization is concerned with. And really making it so that honestly, the attacker just says, you know what, this isn't worth it and get them to move on. Like that's the thing is like everyone is getting scanned all the time. Every single company gets scanned, gets phishing emails, they're getting probed. Attackers are trying to find easy targets. And if you're not an easy target, well, let's just move on to someone else.
So based on this and all these mitigation techniques and also new threats or new attacks that are being explored, and we are in the era of artificial intelligence, or many people refer to this as AI. So
Sure.
what is so is in the end AI a friend for cybersecurity or a foe? Is it so?
Well, first, I'm super impressed that it only took about 20 minutes to start talking about AI. So that's good. It's usually the first like 3 or 4 minutes of a podcast recently we start talking about AI. So I'm glad that you worked up to it. Um, is it a friend or a foe? That's an excellent question. And the question is, it's both. It's both, and it really depends on who's using the tool. So here's what I'll tell you about at least my perspective on AI is I don't subscribe to this message that AI is going to solve all the problems and it's going to take all the jobs and we'll all be able to go and live on the beach and enjoy our days and read books. Like it's not going to start to replace humans, at least not yet. I don't believe in a really significant or substantive way. And I think that the companies that are starting to do that now, I think are going to end up hiring a lot of those people back at much higher rates later because they're going to learn a hard lesson. But again, that's my perspective, right? I could be very wrong on this. Here's where I don't believe I'm wrong. AI is a tool. And depending on who's using that tool, AI can be a friend or AI can be a foe, right? So, in the hands of a skilled individual, if someone has access to a large language model that they can use to accelerate triage, to produce consistent investigations, to collect evidence, and to really automate the processes of what I used to lean on my human cybersecurity analyst to do, well, then, yeah, it's a friend. You're going to be much more efficient. You're going to be much faster. You're going to be much more consistent. And you're going to have the opportunity to have everything done by a machine at a very, very high level of quality. But you still need that human being to review things and kind of, take the next steps and actions. However, the opposite is also true. That same technology, unrestricted, in a threat actor's hands is going to be able to do things like automate reconnaissance, automate exploitation, automate the development of weapons. I was just at the Black Hat and DEF CON conferences just about a month ago here. So I don't know when this will come out, but a month ago, roughly in 2025. And they were talking about how last year AI found no 0 days. And this year they found dozens in the first 6 months, right? So these 0 day vulnerabilities, these things that are not patched, that have no protections, that are easily exploitable, are coming out exceptionally faster than they ever have before because AI is being weaponized in that way. In that case, it's the opposite side of the argument. In that case, AI is a foe. So really what this is going to be is this is going to turn into this arms race of who is using AI better. Is it the attackers or is it the defenders? And really, that's going to become how we determine, or even where cybersecurity evolves as we move into the future.
Yeah, that's a so interesting comment, and that creates a little bit or increases the concern of some companies of how they will be better protect themselves in this new era of AI, where even more people now have access to tools to create new types of threats
Absolutely.
just for fun.
That's right. Well, you know what I'll tell you, because this is interesting on the defender side as well, is, you know, when I talk to people about, hey, getting into cybersecurity in my career or their career, how do I get into it? How do I get started? People are starting to already say, well, AI will help me. I'll be able to do it with AI. Here's the thing. The skill set in cybersecurity is going to fundamentally shift over the next 3 to 5 years. And the skill set today is, do I know how to code? Do I know how to read code? Do I know how to do things like regex or Java or read logs or use tooling? And that's all still going to be valid. But as we shift away and more is offloaded to the machines, more is offloaded to AI, we're actually going to get to a point where it's going to be more about, do you understand how things work enough so that you can ask the right questions? Because that's really what it is. AI is not good at intuition, but it's very good at instruction. So if you can say, hey, here's my instruction. I need to know this information from this source system, and I needed to understand this with these parameters. AI is going to give you that great answer as long as it has that data. But if you give it, for example, a big spreadsheet full of logs, and you say find the threat vector, right, or find the entry point, it would fail every single time because it doesn't have context, right? So the shift in AI, just like the attackers are using it to build exploits and weapons, is to get defenders the right amount of data in the right way, and then get them to ask the right questions.
Yeah, it is like opposing forces meeting in order to develop more knowledge. I would say, but of course, the consequences of being breached are not a fun story. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No.
And on this technology, since we are on this topic of artificial intelligence, I have been reading that there are some new technology out there of, if I pronounce this correctly, it's called Agentic AI. And I have been
Yeah.
reading in security or cybersecurity, there are many solutions that are based on such Agentic AI solutions.
Yeah, for
Would you
sure.
be able to say a little bit on this topic, or what is your experience or let's say view on these topics? Have you used them, or do your customers use them, for example? Were there any value?
Yeah. So I think that's where the world is going. So agentic AI really is just a fancy way of saying you have a very specific agent for a very specific purpose, right? That's where the word comes from. It comes from the word agent, right? So if you have an agent that has one thing that it does very, very well, you can think of it as a very focused large language model, something that is trained very well on a specific purpose, that has access to the right data for that purpose, and has the right kind of understanding context to be able to do that thing very, very well. So, for example, where I expect the world is going to go is there are going to be very specific agents that are much smaller language models that do these things that you need them to do. For example, there'll be a firewall agent, or there will be a triage agent, or a case management agent, or a network security agent, whatever. Right? The possibilities are limitless, and then you'll end up having this army of agents that are deployed throughout the network that do these things that are very specific and purpose built. But then you'll have these orchestrator agents that will start to pull this information back, very much like a human management structure, right? So if you think about it, let's pretend we're triaging some cyber attack on a network, right? if I'm doing this as a human, well, I'm running incident response. I'm going to say, okay, hey, network team, shut down these ports and then pull this information. Hey, endpoint team, I need you to put in blocks for these things and show me everywhere that these files exist. Or I would say things like, hey, legal team, like engage cyber insurance, right? If you translate that into the agentic model, it's really the same, right? You have this coordinator agent at the top that says, hey, network agent, block these ports, pull back this information. Hey, legal agent, right? Send a notification to external counsel and to whatever, right? To dial cyber insurance and provide this information. Hey, endpoint agent, like show me where these files have been and then pull it all back together. That's really what it is. And I think that as organizations lean into the efficiency and speed that AI or generative AI is offering them, these are the systems we're going to start to see emerge. And in some cases, we've already seen them. Some of this already is starting to exist.
So you've seen them. So you've seen them in clients, or clients use them, or they actually, I don't know, purchased, or you had to install for them.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can create them yourself, right? If you have a subscription to any of these, these AI providers, whether it's, Amazon's Bedrock or OpenAI's, OpenAI, ChatGPT, you have the ability to go in and create agents. And all it is it's an age, it's a part of the large language model that is purpose built for a very specific thing. Hey, this is going to be my cyber intelligence agent. So I'm going to point it at these data sources and I'm going to give it this information and it has this context. So go out and give me intelligence about these things. Here's a great use case. If you wanted to build a cyber intelligence agent, right? You don't want to point it at every source out there and say, give me all of the cyber intelligence. That's too much. That's terabytes of data. But if you say, get me cyber intelligence, but here is my list of technologies that I use, only give me intelligence that's based on this subset of data, well, that agent is going to be much more effective now because it's going to reference the document. And it's going to say, okay, these are the things I'm concerned about. Pull the data back, filter the things that don't matter, take the information, make it human readable, produce my reports, send it off. That would be a good application of a cyber threat intelligence agent.
Thank you very much. It's really enlightening. And one can imagine that people will also think about business solutions that create some kind of holistic security by implementing a group of such agents or installing a group of such agents in their clients or networks or premises or sensitive data. So it goes more and more in this direction if I I, I got that correctly.
Yeah. I mean, it's also going to be another threat vector as well. Because if people create these agents and don't secure them properly, they may become the thing that's targeted.
That's true, because now the cybersecurity space will go back to secure the AI,
That's right. Exactly. It's all cyclical. It all comes back.
which is a very interesting topic. So maybe as a kind of a closing point, um, so what is the vision for Talas? Where would you like to?
Oof.
I don't know. I mean, this is such a cliche question. Where would you like to be in the future? But let's say, what is the vision or dream for Talas Security? Or
Boy, we're getting into dreams, huh? I get to do the blue sky exercise of what is the dream
absolutely,
for Talos
absolutely,
Security.
absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Um, the dream for cybersecurity, for Talos Security rather, is the ability for there to be a level playing field for businesses of all sizes. Right? We truly believe that the enterprises that exist, the large corporations, the Fortune 500s, they have all of the money, they have all of the best talent, they have access to all the best tooling. They have the best opportunity to provide the largest and most comprehensive cybersecurity solutions for their customers, for their organizations. But they only make up 1% of the companies in the United States, right? Let alone globally, right? It's even smaller. So now if we think about globally, all of these companies that don't have those resources, the 99.99% of companies that are providing these services all over the world, they don't have access to these resources. They don't have access to the same level of talent. They don't have access to all of these things that these large, huge corporations have. So our dream would be that we could provide the services that allow all of the small and medium-sized businesses to have access to that same level of comprehensive cybersecurity, the same visibility into their network, the same ability to understand where their cyber controls work, the same ability to understand their risks and to be able to act on those risks without having to have someone like me that's full time on staff. That would be the dream. It would be to level the playing field for cybersecurity so that everyone had equal access to that level of cybersecurity control.
That's really interesting. So would you, if I may, let's say expand on the topic, would you, let's say in the future, you would wake up and you will look at your website and you would see something like a menu that says subscription, um, holistic security for your company, for example, and people would could potentially order this or somehow use this type of service and have at least a kind of a basic or even more advanced protection on all the topics that you discussed, processes, patching, vulnerability scanning, or any
Yeah.
other topics.
I,
Were you dreaming something
I,
like of a service like this or?
I was so the thing is, this is a huge problem to solve. So I don't know exactly how to solve it. Yes, this is still the dream, right? How do we solve it? I think it's going to be a mix of technology. It's going to be a mix of services. It's going to be a mix of training, right? Because there's still elements that people will still need to understand how cyber works, right? It's, like I said before, you can't just buy something and turn it on and be good. There's an element of participation that has to come with an organization. So in terms of how to solve this problem, yeah, we're leaning into things like technology, services, subscription models for sure. But also like there's still a ton of problems to solve in that space that we haven't even worked out yet.
I will wish the best for
Well,
the
thank you.
achievement of the dream because it's power that drives us forward, right?
Hey,
It's the power.
when someone gives me the opportunity to dream, I'm gonna take it.
I think if I may comment on this, it is given to us by definition from birth.
Oh, there you go.
Can
Very
use it.
nice. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone has the power to dream. So yeah, I mean that's what it looks like for us at Talos, and we work every day to try to achieve it.
It was really a pleasure. Thank you so very much, Paul. Many topics are known to professionals, but the way that you put them so, let's say, directly, I believe they create more awareness also for the business owners. Things that create more awareness about the risks and why cybersecurity or security could protect really the operation of a business, which is very important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so
So
much.
thank you, and we wish the best for Talas Security, and yeah, and we will stay in contact for the future episodes of Tech Talk. Thank you all. Thank you very
Sounds
much
great.
for listening and for being present.
Thank you all. Thanks so much for having me on. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.